Today, I'll be updating my 2024 electoral map prediction. We're now halfway through August, and in less than 3 months, the next president will be chosen. So today, we're going to see where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump stand on the path to 270 electoral votes. We're going to begin by filling in the solid states for both candidates. These are states that either Harris or Trump are going to win by at least 15 percentage points. And so we're going to begin with the safe blue states, which are Washington, California, Hawaii, as well as Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine. For Trump, he is on track to win the states of Alaska, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, nearly all of Nebraska, along with Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and the 2nd District of Maine. And so, with these solid states filled in for both candidates, Trump leads with 126 electoral votes to the vice president's 109. Next up, we have the likely states, states that will go to either candidate by margins between 7 to 15 points. I have updated my rating system to be more practical, and so we're going to begin with the likely states for Kamala Harris, starting off with a few obvious ones. States like Oregon are still going to go blue, even if they're slightly more competitive. Kamala Harris can probably come out with around a 12-point victory. In 2016, Biden won the state by 16. However, it did only go to Clinton by 11. We also have the state of Illinois, a state that Harris is probably going to win by just under 15 points, along with Biden's home state of Delaware. Delaware is not as blue as you might think. Hillary Clinton won it by a likely margin in 2016. Joe Biden barely won it by a solid margin in 2020. We also have New Jersey, a state where Democrats are very unpopular right now. Typically, this would be a safe blue state. However, Bob Menendez has really done a lot of damage for Democrats. He is still a sitting member of Congress. He is still in the U.S. Senate. He'll resign pretty soon. However, the Senate race to replace him is a lot more competitive than a race in New Jersey should be, and that is going to rub off on the presidential election as well. Kamala Harris is not going to win this state by over 15 points. We also have New York. Its 28 electoral votes are going to be more competitive than normal as well, even though Joe Biden carried the Empire State by 23 points last time. We have a lot of very unpopular figures in the Empire State. Kathy Hochul, the governor, along with Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, they're both highly disapproved of. And just a few years ago, Andrew Cuomo resigned for sexual harassment. So looking at these likely states, a lot of it is because Democrats simply aren't in the position they were in 4 years ago. In Oregon, the governor's election went down into the single digit margin. Same thing in New York, and we have a single digit Senate race right now in New Jersey. And the final likely blue state on this map is Colorado, a state that Joe Biden carried by 13.5 percentage points last time. Kamala Harris is probably going to win by just over 7, and that will be enough for it to fall into the likely Democratic category. Before we continue, only 11% of you guys are actually subscribed, so please subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. Link in the description below. We're now going to get into the likely states for Donald Trump, beginning with the two most obvious ones, which are, of course, Iowa and Ohio. Two states that the former president carried in both 2016 and 2020, all by likely margins. Donald Trump really did do very well in both of these states in the last two elections. In 2012, they both went to Obama by pretty safe margins. Obviously, it's not a 15-point margin, but he definitely won them by a pretty large margin against Mitt Romney. In 2016, though, these states shifted nearly 15 points to the right to vote for Donald Trump. They used to be among the most competitive. They used to vote in the middle. They were swing states, but that is no longer the case. They are now red states. And in the future, they will go to Republicans by over 15 points. We saw their governors both get reelected by solid margins in 2022, but this November on the presidential level, things are likely to be a little bit more competitive. We also have two other major prizes for the GOP. First off, Texas. This really is a state that they cannot lose. There's been a lot of talk recently in recent years about Democrats somehow being able to flip the Lone Star State somewhere in the near future. That isn't going to happen for a very long time. Texas is still a red state. And no matter how much Democrats try, they tried very hard in 2020. Joe Biden campaigned there quite a bit, put in hundreds of millions of dollars into campaign advertising, and he still lost by 5.6 percentage points. But this time, Trump is going to win by at least 9 points. It's probably going to be a double-digit margin in Texas, and that will make it likely red. And finally, in Florida, this is another big surprise. This used to be one of the most competitive states in the country. I mean, if you've been following elections for basically any amount of time that's more than 4 years, you know Florida used to be one of the most competitive states. There really wasn't any swing state that was more important than Florida because it really did swing both ways, and it really is worth a lot electorally. It now has 30 electoral votes after the census in 2020. Republicans have gained a huge advantage in the state since then. The governor, Ron DeSantis, and one of its senators, Marco Rubio, both won their re-elections by safe margins in 2022, and Donald Trump is at least going to win by 7 points here for the 2024 election. And so, with all of the solid and likely states filled in, Trump leads with 219 electoral votes to Harris's 191. We're now going to get into the lean states. These states will be decided by margins between 2 and 7 percentage points. They're going to be more competitive, but one candidate definitely still has a noticeable advantage. And so, starting off, the first lean state for the Harris-Walz ticket is going to be New Mexico. New Mexico is a state that Democrats have won in the last few elections. The last time it voted red was 2004 when George W. Bush very narrowly carried the state. In 2016, Clinton won by 8 points, and in 2020, Biden by 11. The state is shifting to the right, though, once again, after it moved to the left quite a bit over the last 2 decades, as Hispanic voters are starting to move away from the Democratic Party, and New Mexico, with a Hispanic majority electorate, it is going to vote for Harris by a weaker margin than it voted for Biden 4 years ago. We also have the state of New Hampshire. Its 4 electoral votes are definitely going to be competitive. I mean, just look at 2016. It was the second closest state in the entire country. 0.37% was the margin that Clinton defeated Harris by. Now, Joe Biden was able to carry the Granite State by 7 points 4 years ago, and Kamala Harris is probably going to win by around 4 to 5. She's definitely the favorite. There's no doubt about that. But New Hampshire is not going to be likely blue. We also have the state of Maine as a whole. It has 2 electoral votes from the at-large vote. Not really too important electorally. It went to Biden by 9 points, but considering Kamala Harris isn't performing even close to as well as the incumbent president was last time, I'm going to place Maine into the lean blue category. But still, Kamala Harris remains the favorite to carry the state. We also have Virginia, 13 electoral votes. Virginia has been shifting to the right. There was a 10-year period where not a single Republican was elected to any statewide offices in Virginia. Biden carried the state by a double-digit margin in the last election, but this time it is going to be closer. Republicans have gained ground there. They now have a governor in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin was elected just 1 year after Biden won his race. He was elected in 2021. And the GOP had shown signs of improvement in polling for the 2024 election so far. Before Biden dropped out, if he had stayed in the race, Trump was going to win Virginia according to the polling average, and Kamala Harris isn't polling as well in Virginia, nearly as well as Biden was in 2020. So the state of Virginia is also going to be lean for the vice president. And the final lean state to go to Harris is going to be Minnesota. This is Tim Walz's home state. Walz was recently chosen to be Harris's running mate. He's the incumbent governor of the state, elected in 2018 and re-elected in 2022. In 2022, he only won his re-election by 8 points. And with him on the ticket, the presidential race is obviously going to be more competitive than these governor's elections. And Walz is an okay candidate. He definitely helps Harris here. However, Minnesota just 8 years ago was a tilt Democratic state. Joe Biden did do well, barely winning it by 7 points in 2020. I don't see Kamala Harris doing better than Biden did 4 years ago, even if she has Walz as her running mate. And so Minnesota is going to be the final lean Democratic state, and this will give the Harris ticket 225 electoral votes. Now, moving on to the lean states for Trump, I'm going to begin with North Carolina. The Tar Heel state was a tilt state in the last election. It went to Trump by just 1%. But today, the former president is the heavy favorite. He can win it by around 4 percentage points. Everybody thought that Joe Biden was going to flip North Carolina last time, but he did not end up doing that. He did win Georgia, which was an even bigger surprise. But North Carolina isn't shifting to the left anytime soon. Democrats have only won the state once since 1976, and that was when Barack Obama was elected. And even then, he only carried the state by a third of a single percentage point. So North Carolina is going to be our first lean state going for Donald Trump. Next up, we have Georgia, which is another relatively competitive state, but Trump still maintains an advantage here. He barely lost it in 2020. It was a quarter of a percentage point, and considering that Kamala Harris is doing much worse than Biden was in 2020, it's going to be very difficult for Harris to win a state like this that Donald Trump was so close to winning last time. Now, in 2016, Trump carried Georgia by 5%. And so he's going to pretty much win it back without too much trouble. Georgia fundamentally is a red state. Brian Kemp was reelected in 2022. He's the governor. He was a Republican. He was reelected by a likely margin, and Trump is at least going to win by a lean margin. We also have Arizona, another state that was very close in the last election, and with the same logic, I mean, Kamala Harris, who chose a Rust Belt governor, Tim Walz, is going to provide no boost to her in these Sun Belt states, and so the state of Arizona is also going to be lean Republican. There's no doubt that Trump is the favorite to win back a state that he carried by nearly 4 points 8 years ago. Arizona has been a Republican state since the 1990s. Democrats have recently made some gains, but on the presidential level, it's going to remain competitive, and it's unlikely the Democrats hold on to the state despite winning it last time. We also have Nevada. This is the last state in the Sun Belt. And basically, what you can see here is that Kamala Harris went very much into the idea of choosing a Midwestern governor, but by doing so, she basically gave up on the Sun Belt, where Trump has been leading for many months now. The former president is the clear favorite in swing states like North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and even Nevada, a state that the GOP hasn't won since 2004. Trump has lost Nevada in both of the last two elections, the Silver State going to Clinton and Biden by the exact same 2.4% margin. And today, Trump is on track to winning Nevada by around 3 percentage points. So it's going to be another lean state added to the Trump column. We're now left with just the three Rust Belt states, and these are three states that are critical for the Harris campaign. If she loses even just one of them, Trump will get over 270 electoral votes. So it's really here where the election will be decided. Even if Trump wins all the Sun Belt battlegrounds, he still has to win at least one of these competitive Midwestern states. And so Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania make up what was formerly known as the Blue Wall. It was called the Blue Wall because they consistently voted blue and helped Democrats win elections all the way from the 1988 election when Wisconsin went to Michael Dukakis, and 1992 when Clinton carried all three of the states. Ever since then, they voted blue in every single presidential election up until 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost all three of them. And that was when these states really started to become competitive. Yes, Joe Biden won them back in 2020, but they were still by very narrow margins. Donald Trump was a great candidate for the Midwest. You know, you can attack him personally. There are issues with him as a candidate, obviously, but he really has performed incredibly well in the Rust Belt. I mean, just look at 2012. Nearly the entire region was blue. Not really a single state was that close. Indiana was the only Republican state 12 years ago. Fast forward just 4 years in 2016, Trump flips Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and even Minnesota is a tilt state. The only state that went to Hillary Clinton by more than 2 points was the state of Illinois, which of course has Chicago. And so Donald Trump really has done well. Yes, he lost the three upper Midwestern states in 2020, but Joe Biden was in a very good position. The economy wasn't great toward the end of Trump's term. We were still very much in the COVID-19 pandemic, and we don't have that anymore. It's now Biden that is in the White House along with Kamala Harris. Democrats are going to be blamed for the issues in our country, and that is why Trump is in a very good position right now to win back states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And so starting off in Wisconsin, this is going to be the final lean state on our map. Michigan and Pennsylvania are currently favored to go to Trump as well. He's been leading in the polls for quite a few months now. Yes, things are tightening up. That's why they're going to be tilt for the GOP, decided by margins less than 2 percentage points. JD Vance is, of course, from Ohio, which neighbors both Michigan and Pennsylvania. He basically cancels out any advantage that Kamala would have with Tim Walz as her running mate, with him being the governor of Minnesota. And the final thing for us to fill in is the second district of Nebraska. It went to Trump in 2016, Biden in 2020. Redistricting has made the district more favorable for Republicans. So right now it's going to be tilt Republican, but it really is a pure toss up. And so, based on our current forecast, Donald Trump and JD Vance are on track to win the election with 313 electoral votes, while Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will pick up just 225. This will make the Harris Walz ticket the worst performing Democratic ticket since 1988. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November, and join my Discord server. Link in the description below.